Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the April 2023 Argo CD and Rollouts community meeting. I'm your host for today, Jesse, maintainer of the Argo project. And if you haven't already, please add yourself to the attendee list in the Google Doc agenda. And a reminder that the Argo project adheres to the CNCF Code of Conduct, so please be courteous and respectful during this meeting. And a reminder that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube. So today we have a couple of topics. One, we'll be going over what's new in Argo CD 2.7. Then we'll have a quick introduction of the Argo Rollouts plugin feature, as well as actually a implementation of the plugin by OpsMX. Before we get started, also a reminder that we do have KubeCon EU in just a few weeks, and as well as Argo, I guess ArgoCon, right? It's a EU ArgoCon co-located. So I think it is sold out, but if you happen to be there, just stop by the Argo booth and say hi to some of the maintainers. Okay, so I think we can get started with the Argo CD 2.7 features, and Leo will be giving an overview of that.
Right. Yeah, hi everyone. Let me start by sharing my screen. Okay, take this out of the way. Yeah, so I'm going to be using the super nice blog post that Kostis from CodeFresh wrote related to this 2.7 RC1 release. So 2.7 RC1 was released a bit more than a week ago. It has 35 new features, 83 bug fixes, and several other small enhancements. In the blog posts, there are some bigger features highlighted and some also as important smaller features represented here. So starting off with the first thing that might pop up for you when you install Argo CD 2.7 is the enhanced logs view, right? So before we always had this logs view in the pod resource. So when you click pod resource, there's a logs tab. So this logs tab was enhanced. So right now there are a few different modes that can be selected. So the follow mode is something that we had in the past, which works similar to the tailing logs in the CLI. But now we also have the historical mode that allows you to do some filters by time range and also filtering by specific strings in the logs. And it was also redesigned to be more performant. So this is also something expected in the new log tab. This was implemented by Alex Collins from Intuit, and yeah, it's going to be there in 2.7. Next feature is it's related to customize. So if you use customize to generate your manifests, you might have noticed that certain situations, if you want to, so not all features of customize are currently available in Argo CD. So things like if you want to leverage the feature where customize allows you to define the namespace or a prefix for your resources, this wasn't available. And with this new feature, if you look here, there are some new attributes, and this will interface with customize to properly generate the manifests the way you want. So yeah, this is also coming in the next release. This was implemented by Andrew from Motional. Argo CD UI extensions can now use backend. So basically, Argo CD had already a functionality to have UI extensions available. So UI extensions, the way it worked, it was mainly a UI component that you could deploy in Argo CD API server, and that would make available some additional tab in the configured resource, allowing you to inspect any application resource owned by that specific application, right? But that was kind of static in a way, because the only data that is available for you is what is available in the application resource. So with this new feature, developers will be able to configure UI extensions to communicate with backend services. So the way it works is mainly Argo CD will behave as some sort of a reverse proxy. And if you enable a specific extension in the Argo CD config map, Argo CD will forward requests to the service that you configured, and this service can live anywhere inside Kubernetes, outside. So just highlight that requests will have to be authenticated, and there are also new or back configuration that will be required to enable those requests to go through. And that was a new feature implemented by me, adding to it, that is going to be there for 2.7. All right, moving forward, one more feature is the pod readiness gate error will be now surfaced to the Argo CD UI, which is a super nice enhancement. We have adding to it several users that are kind of lost trying to find the root cause whenever something goes wrong with their deployments. And this is the type of feature that personally I think it's super valuable for Argo CD. So right now, this feature will be, with this feature, users will be able to see a new section in the pod resource stating the exact error that happened for that while that sync. So in this case, for readiness gates, I am aware there are other tasks being worked on also to improve visibility of errors in the UI. But this one is the great one that is going to be available in 2.7, implemented by Mayursin from Acuity. All right. And yeah, one more feature that is highlighted in Kostis blog post is the ability that users will now have to filter resources whenever they trigger Argo CD app wait or app sync CLI commands. So before, those commands were mainly listing every resource that was belonging to those applications. So right now, for example, if an application has thousands of resources, but the user is just interested in seeing the deployments that are being synced, then there is a possibility to add this additional CLI flag to filter just the resources that the user wants, which is a super nice enhancement for Argo CD CLI. This was implemented by my hash Aliga from InfraCloud. Here at the bottom of the post, we have other smaller features maybe. For the sake of timing, I'm not going to go through every single one of them. So I invite you, if you're considering upgrading Argo CD to 2.7 in the near future, please take a look at the post, read at this complete list, that you may find something interesting for you and your company to use. So one last thing for Argo CD 2.7, following our roadmap, 2.7 is targeted to early May. So keep your eyes open. Early May is probably when we're gonna have the final release out. If you're willing to try the RC1, please report back bug issues that you may find. that will help us to provide and release 2.7 with the less amount of bugs possible. And that's it for me.
All right. Thanks, Leo. Any questions for Leo about this 2.7 release? About I guess I have a question for or maybe it's more of a chance to plug in the backend extension feature that you're also working on. I know. So what's the project that's driving the backend extension is your labs project, right? That you.
Yeah, in the labs project, we have a repository called Argo CD extensions metrics. And the use case that we have is that we want to surface Prometheus metrics to users so they can visualize right from Argo CD UI the load and the memory consumption from their application, for example. So for that, we need some sort of a mechanism that communicates with Prometheus in our case, and provides this data to the UI. And that's the use case that we currently have, and we want to make it available. So this extension is going to be provided as part of as an open source project. And it's going to be the first Argo CD extensions to use this backend functionality.
Cool. Yeah, we look forward to seeing the demo of that. Actually, there was a mini demo earlier last year, but then I think I'm sure there'll be more of that.
Yeah.
All right. All right. If there's no questions, moving on. The next topic we have is about Argo Rollouts plugins by Zach, and then we'll actually see an implementation of this feature.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll try to keep this relatively quick since there will be a demo of an actual implementation later. But part of Argo Rollouts 1.5 release, which the RC1 is out now. I think one of the bigger features or change in the ecosystem is that Argo Rollouts is basically getting plugin support. We're currently just starting out with plugin support for traffic routers and metric providers. And so that's kind of where we're currently. I have some other plans that I plan on bringing up later. But I've kind of come up with a system, I guess, of discovering plugins, some standardizations around naming, and things like that. So today, most plugins, if they want to be listed within the docs, which each of the traffic routers or metric providers will have a section in docs that are related to like which plugins are there. I will basically ask that in order to be listed there, that those projects keep their metric plugin source code within the Argo Proj Labs repo. And it's going to kind of follow a naming convention of rollouts dash whatever the plugin feature is, and then metric plugin or traffic router plugin, and doing underscores for some separations there just to kind of help people find things, keep things consistent and things like that. There's a pretty decent dev docs that have just that kind of go through some of this and how to create plugins. I also plan on doing a more in-depth blog post around creating a plugin, what's required to create a plugin, how to debug plugins, etc. That should be coming out soonish as well. Just a quick kind of high overview of how these plugins work. There's basically a new config map that has been added to Argo Rollouts that has two top-level elements for metric provider plugins or traffic router plugins. And one of the key things here is this name field. So the name field has a kind of a standard convention around a namespace / plugin name that needs to be followed, because we'll see how that gets used elsewhere. There are currently two supported methods of, I call them installation, I guess. One is it can pull from a HTTP or HTTPS URL, If that's done, I highly recommend using the SHA. I think, yeah, it's optional, but I highly recommend using the SHA-256 hash check if you are downloading plugins, because who knows what could be there. The other option is a file-based, which then leaves it up to the end users to figure out how to get that file mounted within the Rollouts controller. Some basic usage of this is what this basically allows your plugin users to do is within Rollouts for traffic routers, there's basically a new plugins field. And this is a map of strings. I don't know why it keeps doing that. That become this map here maps to the name of the plugin here, and those have to be the same basically, and then that allows the plugin code to easily find its particular configuration, which plugin authors can then basically do anything that they want inside this field for whatever configuration they need. And that's for traffic router plugin. This is this example. For various analysis templates, it's basically the same concept. There's a provider plugin, the name of the plugin following the namespace / plugin name field, and then the plugin authors can add any particular struct that they want for their particular plugin. Yeah, that's kind of how that goes. There is one if you are creating a traffic router plugin, it is currently left up for the plugin authors to define the requirements for Kubernetes RBAC for those particular resource kinds, and make sure that they inform their users how to either bind them to the default rollout service account or not. Analysis templates probably don't generally have that problem, but that's basically how you use plugins. They're relatively simple to implement. It basically implements for the most part, the standard Golang interface that is currently used for, say, a metric provider. There's just some small differences. A new function has been added to basically init, where you can set up any type of clients, any kube clients, any Prometheus clients or metric provider client that you need to. And then error types, there's just some RPC things. The plugin system uses RPC in the background and spins up a process, and there's some typing stuff that had to change. So there's some minor differences in this interface, but the functions generally stay the same between both metric providers and traffic routers. So you have basically set weight, set header, all the things that if you have looked at rollouts implementing of a traffic router or metric provider, these functions are very common. Yeah, that's basically my quick intro. People feel free to play around with plugins now that they're there. So any questions?
Will there be a quick question? So will there be a provision in the rollouts Helm chart to mount
Yeah, so the
things into the controller?
The rollouts Helm chart's actually not really maintained by Argo proj maintainers. It's kind of a separate community that maintains that. If that makes sense to do, I would suggest probably opening a ticket on that Helm chart repo.
Okay.
Yeah, if that makes sense. I don't know what kind of support Helm has for loading in files and things like that, like, pulling from different resources and stuff. So I would reach out to that community and see if it makes sense for them to add that.
So
I was not aware that it's maintained by a separate community.
Unfortunately.
For the plugin download, so that because in the config map you show, like, you can specify HTTP URL, so that gets downloaded like through a knit container or something. That
it gets downloaded by the controller.
Oh, okay. Start that then. Okay.
Yeah, at startup. Yep. So there's some documentation that kind of talks about some pros and cons of downloading versus file mounting, as far as availability is concerned and running an HA and things like that. There's some things there to think about, but it's a real convenient option to easily get plugins installed. So that there's a a pro con there that each user should decide what works for them.
It looks like the question is what happens if the plugin is unavailable temporarily? I'm guessing the controller won't start.
It doesn't start. And we went back and forth on whether or not the right decision was to not start or start and throw errors. After talking with Leo kind of heavily about it, I think we both lean towards the idea that if the plugin isn't available, that the controller not starting is a good thing. One of the kind of interesting, so in 1.4 or 1.5, there was a pretty big rewrite to leader election. So basically, one of the ideas is that you can spin up, 2 or 3 Argo rollouts controllers. Each of them will download the plugin, and let's say for some reason you delete a pod or a node goes away and deletes that pod, and another pod will become leader and already have that executable available to it. So that provides some safety, I guess, in plugins not being available, but that is one of the risks of downloading the files, basically.
Yeah, and if that's a concern, you always have the option to.
You always have the option to file. Yep, build a Docker image, mount a file, however you init container, however you want to bring in that file. That's why the file option was added as the option around that. So.
And my question was the naming convention that you are using. I noticed the plugin is a suffix for the plugin names, but if you wanted it to be more discoverable or organized, you may consider putting like rollouts dash metric plugin dash and then OpsMX or gateway API at the end, so that way they're lexicographically ordered.
Yeah, that's fair. GitHub searching does fairly well at being able to do anything, but that's a interesting, we're early enough that we can play with that still. I'm hoping the docs are kind of the more popular source for finding those, but it is nice that there's some standard, at least in the repos, but that's good feedback.
I guess when we discussed about this naming convention, I guess the idea was to have the repo name as part of the main structure of the plugin ID, so we would avoid clashes with different plugin providers, right? So that I think that was the main intention, right, Zach, that we discussed in the past.
We did talk about that. I think Jesse's comment is more about the names in GitHub being able to, search for like rollouts metric and get a list of metric plugins. It's just discoverability within a GitHub UI.
Well, it actually relates to that as well. So for example, you have rollouts dash sample and underscore Nginx, and you had to choose underscore because if you chose a dash,
correct,
you wouldn't be able to distinguish if it was metric plugin. But if you if it was a prefix,
sure,
everything following that is a name of thing, and you can just that's
do whatever you want. That's fair too. Yep, no, I agree, and I didn't think about that, and you're right. The underscore there is to differentiate between the plugin, not blur them all together. And yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Okay, let's actually get to the actual implementation one. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Stack.
Yep. If I can find Zoom.
So we have someone from OpsMX that will demo implementation. Is it?
Yes, I'll share my screen.
Okay, thank you.
So is my screen visible to all?
Yes.
So hey everyone, I'm Shraddha. I work with OpsMX. So we basically work in CI/CD. One of our products is ISD, wherein we use Argo and Spinnaker to deliver software. We've been using Argo rollouts for almost about a year now. And basically, I'd been using the job-based provider. But with the recent plugin that Zach has kind of worked on, we are migrating to the plugin now. So he's also created a repo for us in the Argo Proj Labs organization, and that is where our binary and our code base stays. So basically, there are a good few benefits that the plugin-based approach kind of gets us compared to the job. The first thing is that we kind of no longer need to create separate RBAC resources that were needed to access resources outside of the jobs pod that we had. And second, if you can see all the stuff over here, so this used to reside in a separate config map, which we, kind of had to mount into the pod. So this stuff now goes away for us as well. So overall things become more simple and minimalist for us. So if you can see over here, this is the plugin provider, and this is the name of the plugin that we have. Right. So the key feature that our product ISD brings is that we support both logs as well as metric analysis. So we support different kind of providers, like we've got Splunk, and then we've got Datadog, Elasticsearch, Prometheus, New Relic, and then there are many more also. So in this example, if you can see, I've used Prometheus for the metric analysis and Elasticsearch for the log analysis, right? So this is how the metric template looks like. So we have a metric template which is defined in a config map. And over here, if you see, basically what we have is basically simple application health metrics that we are kind of monitoring. And then you can see over here that we are not just targeting one, we've got multiple metrics that we can target over here. And for the logs, just give me a second, I'll shift this down. Yeah. For the logs also exist in a config map. Here we can, if you can see over here, we are targeting Elasticsearch. And here in the error topics, we can define what all error kinds are we targeting and what is the criticality of it. So basically, at the core of our product, what we have is we have a strong verification engine, which is kind of, backed by ML models and stat tests. And this engine, it works on the metrics and the logs that are collected while your analysis is being run. And it gives a score based on which either we, roll back if the score is less than the desired score, or we progress on to the next stage. So a couple of hours back, I did a couple of runs in Argo. If you can see over here, this is one of the analysis run resources that we have. So yeah, if you can see over here. So here is the report URL that got generated for us. And if I click on this will take me over here. So if you see the metrics that we had kind of tracked over there, right? So here we can see individual details about each of the metrics as to how they performed. If you can see within the 3-minute analysis duration, this is what the data for the baseline and the new release looked like. And so basically this is the detailed view of all the metrics that we had configured over there. And as far as the log analysis over there is concerned, we didn't get any sort of unexpected things over here. But then if we go to expected, we'll see that there are different clusters which we kind of make over here. And these clusters kind of eventually lead to the final score that is displayed over here. So I kind of ran another run over here in which, there were null pointer exceptions and then critical exceptions which were generated, due to which our analysis kind of failed for us. And then if we go here, we see that we didn't get progressed to the next stage. So I think I'm kind of done over here. Also, to mention that I want to give a shout out to Zach here for all his help and work with the plugin that he did. Yeah. Anjali and Gopi, would you want to add something over here? If I kind of missed out on something.
But I think for me, you have covered most of it. Thank you so much.
All right, then in that case, I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Shraddha.
Yeah.
So the 2.7 feature seems like really good. Obviously, you saw one of the reports, we had to go to the external URL. If I don't know if it works for rollouts as well, but if we could use the Argo CD as a reverse proxy and get it displayed in the same UI, that will make it so much easier for us.
Yeah, exactly. So the extension, the backend support for Argo CD extensions is probably something you'll also be interested in, because the up until this feature, it was the UI could only show more information about the YAML that you are looking at. So it's very limited. Basically, it's prettify the YAML into like a UI components. But now with the backend, you could build out a UI extension that actually talks to your OptimX backend and presents information in any way you see fit. So actually, that's probably the next step that you should consider for kind of bringing value to your users.
The other feature that we are excited is also this Argo plugin capability to interface with the newer or different types of load balancers. That also makes it easy for us to customize this. We see quite a few different ways of doing things. And that combination with this verification capability will really help us with the automation there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also been important for us because it's hard for the project to understand how every ingress controller behaves and works. And so that separation allows one more rapid development of a certain support for an ingress or mesh, but also kind of separates the kind of have the cleaner separation of concerns by abstracting it onto a plugin system. Like a good example of this is SMI. So SMI is already looks like it's starting to get deprecated, and then we have native support in rollouts, and then so that's kind of just legacy stuff that we're gonna have to decide what to do with, in the future. But with a plugin system, that you give that decision to like end users now to see what they want to include and not include or upgrade depending on their need. So
Thank
great.
you. So, that was a quick demo. Any questions or suggestions?
This is a weird, I don't know, question, maybe thought. So I've been toying around with kind of hacky ideas for these plugins because there are a handful of them now. Rollouts allows you to have multiple traffic routers defined per rollout. One of the interesting ways that you could use for that is you could feed back in the percentages of traffic to your metric system as well. With that, just be kind of an interesting idea, because knowing which percentage of weight things are at can determine kind of what your analysis looks like, right? Or affect that in a way, right?
So this is a feedback loop, right? So the way we think about that is we go and configure certain percentages in the routers, but actual values we want to measure directly from the router in the application. And that becomes our feedback loop into making the decisions. So for example, if we say send 30% traffic to the version 2, we want to actually measure what level of traffic is coming through for it.
Sure.
It also depends on the API calls. Some APIs take slightly longer, some take less, and there's some affinity that's there. So using that, we make the decisions with the actual measured values.
I suppose that makes sense. And because you have log integration, you can probably get that percentages from the logs as well as not necessarily needing to feed that in from Rollouts itself or from the
That's right.
whatever.
That's right. We actually want to get that data from the application.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Itself.
Yeah, that's fair. Yep. No, that makes sense. Anyways, there's lots of, I hope people, there's lots of really interesting uses that are maybe non-traditional that can also be used for both the analysis templates and for plugins. So I'm excited to see what comes out of those.
And then I saw a hand raise from, I think, was it Jace? Yeah.
Yeah, Jason. I'm on the Argo Helm project, and I just want to emphasize from earlier, we've done a really good job the past year making sure the Helm charts stay up to date with the parent projects. PRs are welcome, issues are welcome. We try to look at when the updates get released for rollouts, CD, or workflows, and if any changes that could happen to the values.yaml, we try our best. We've been communicating with the parent projects, so these new plugin features and stuff that are about to come or already here, we're going to definitely try and get those in the Helm charts also. So, yeah, I'm going to ping some upstream folks, and we're definitely going to try and stay up to date as fast as we can. I know customizes in the parent project, so it's easier, but we know a lot of companies, including the one I work for, we use the Helm charts. So,
thank you, Jason.
Okay. Any additional agenda items that people want to bring up before we wrap up?
I have just one more question related to the demo that was provided. I really like the logs capability. I'm just curious to understand a little bit better how does that work, because I didn't understand the UI that was shown. It seems that it's some sort of a proprietary tool that does that. So I'm curious if we're able to configure that plugin to run some analysis on logs provided by Splunk, and having that guide our rollouts based on that.
Yeah, the integrations with Splunk are available. The premise there is, as you're rolling out, we want to look for any of the new kind of errors or new logs that are categorized as errors or warnings in it. And so it's a sort of, it is using processing through ML to understand, because these are free-flowing text and data. That is where the ML comes in to categorize and also to identify if two of these log lines look similar or not. Based on that, it categorizes, groups them, and then contextualizes those errors, and then compares, are these errors new, and based on that it scores. So yeah, integration with Splunk also exists. So you can say my application logs are going into this Splunk, and as you roll out, it can pull the data in from there and then verify that.
Cool. And am I is it mandatory to work with this score concept, or I can configure that a specific analysis template to just check for the rate incident of a specific query that I want to be executed against my Splunk instance? Is that a possibility as well?
Yes, you can customize the things that you want to do. You can also train the system. If it comes and says, these are errors I found, you say ignore it. Or if you find some structure that you want to never repeat, you can specify that as a critical issue. So if it ever shows up, it immediately fails the analysis.
Cool. And one last question: is this self-contained in the plugin, or it requires some external service for...
At the moment, it requires an external service.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Anjali, do you have any thoughts?
No, Gopi, I think you covered it.
Okay.
Thank you, Jack. Thanks for the help. And it looks pretty exciting, 2.7. We are quite excited. Yeah, some of these features we'll try it out.
Yeah, no, thank you for testing the waters with this new system, and it was great collaboration with you and Zach. And
It was. I made them make they were really, really early adopters, so they got the fun joy of making changes a few times, but it was good working with them. So
yeah,
it definitely simplified in the end. So,
yeah, I agree.
all right. I think if there's no other questions or topics, I think that's a wrap for this month. We do have the weekly contributors meeting, although and then ArgoCon and KubeCon are coming up, so we'll likely that week we'll we'll figure out if that's still happening. I think only a few people are going to ArgoCon and KubeCon. All right, thanks everyone. We see you guys next time.
thank you.
Thank you.
Great demos, everybody. Good work.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.